Sarah Martinez had always been different from other women in the military. Standing at 5 feet 6 inches with an athletic build, she carried herself with quiet confidence that some mistook for arrogance. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her piercing green eyes missed nothing. What most people didn't know was that behind her calm exterior lay years of the most grueling training the military had to offer. The Naval Special Warfare Command had been her home for the past 4 years. Sarah was one of only a handful of women who had successfully completed the basic underwater demolition training, known as BUD-S. The statistics were staggering. Out of hundreds who attempted the training, less than 20% made it through. For women, the numbers were even more challenging. Sarah had not only survived but excelled, earning her place among the elite Navy SEALs. Her journey to this point had been anything but easy. Growing up in a small town in Texas, Sarah had been raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Her grandmother, Maria, was a tough woman who had worked double shifts at a local factory to make ends meet. She taught Sarah that strength came from within and that gender was never an excuse for giving up. During high school, Sarah had dominated in track and field, breaking several state records in distance running. Her coaches tried to recruit her for college athletics, but Sarah had different plans. The day after graduation, she walked into the local Navy recruitment office and signed up. Her grandmother had been worried but proud, knowing that Sarah had found her calling. Basic training had been a wake-up call. The physical demands were intense, but Sarah discovered she thrived under pressure. Her drill instructors quickly noticed her leadership qualities and recommended her for advanced training programs. When the opportunity for special operations came up, Sarah didn't hesitate. She knew the road ahead would be brutal, but she was ready. BUD-S training pushed every recruit to their absolute limits. The infamous Hell Week involved 5.5 days of continuous training with a maximum of 4 hours of sleep total. Candidates carried heavy boats over their heads, ran endless miles in wet sand, and endured freezing ocean water for hours. Many strong men quit during this phase, but Sarah persevered. She had learned to compartmentalize pain and push through when her body screamed for her to stop. The psychological warfare was just as challenging as the physical demands. Instructors would target perceived weaknesses, trying to break candidates mentally. Some recruits were told they weren't tough enough, others that they didn't belong. Sarah faced additional scrutiny as one of the few women in the program. She heard whispers that she was only there to fill quotas, that standards had been lowered to accommodate her. These comments only fueled her determination to prove herself. During underwater training exercises, Sarah excelled. Her lung capacity and swimming ability were exceptional, often outperforming male counterparts who were larger and stronger. She could hold her breath for over 4 minutes and navigate complex underwater obstacles with precision. Her instructors began to take notice of her unique talents. Combat training revealed another side of Sarah's abilities. She was a natural marksman, consistently hitting targets at distances that challenged even experienced shooters. Her hand-to-hand combat skills were refined through countless hours of practice. She studied different martial arts techniques and adapted them to work with her smaller frame and quick reflexes. The team-building exercises taught her the importance of trust and communication. In the SEALs, every member's life depended on their teammates. Sarah learned to work seamlessly with others, often taking point on dangerous missions during training scenarios. Her fellow trainees gradually moved from skepticism to respect as they witnessed her capabilities firsthand. Survival training in various environments tested every skill she had developed. Whether it was desert survival in Arizona or cold weather training in Alaska, Sarah adapted quickly. She learned to find food and water in hostile environments, navigate without modern equipment, and maintain equipment in extreme conditions. These skills would prove invaluable in real-world operations. After graduating from BUD-S, Sarah was assigned to SEAL Team 5, based in San Diego. Her first few months were spent in additional specialized training. She learned advanced demolitions, became proficient with dozens of different weapons systems, and mastered various infiltration techniques. Languages came naturally to her, and she quickly became conversational in Arabic and Spanish. Her first deployment took her to Afghanistan, where she served as part of a reconnaissance team. The mission involved gathering intelligence on Taliban movements in remote mountain regions. For weeks, her team operated behind enemy lines, living in harsh conditions while collecting vital information. Sarah's endurance and attention to detail made her invaluable during these operations. The respect from her teammates came gradually but genuinely. Initially, some had been protective, trying to shield her from the most dangerous assignments. Sarah had to prove repeatedly that she could handle anything thrown at her. During one particularly intense firefight, she single-handedly held off enemy forces while her team evacuated wounded civilians. Her actions that day earned her a Bronze Star and the unwavering respect of her unit. Between deployments, Sarah continued her training and education. She earned a degree in international relations through online courses. Knowing that her military career would eventually lead to other opportunities, she also volunteered to help train new recruits, sharing her experiences and insights with the next generation of special operations personnel. The physical toll of constant training and deployments was significant. Sarah maintained a strict fitness regimen, often working out twice a day. Her diet was carefully planned to fuel her demanding lifestyle. Sleep was precious and often interrupted, so she learned to rest efficiently whenever possible. Despite the challenges, Sarah found deep satisfaction in her work. Every mission had meaning. Whether it was rescuing hostages, gathering critical intelligence, or eliminating threats to national security, she knew that her unique perspective as a woman often provided tactical advantages in certain situations, particularly when interacting with local populations in conservative cultures. Her personal life took a back seat to her military career. Relationships were difficult to maintain given the secretive nature of her work and frequent deployments. Many of her civilian friends struggled to understand the demands of her job. Sarah found her closest relationships were with fellow service members who shared similar experiences and challenges. The transformation from small-town Texas girl to elite special operations warrior had been complete. Sarah carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had proven herself in the most challenging circumstances. She had earned her place through merit, dedication, and an unwillingness to accept limitations others tried to place on her. Now, as she prepared for what would be her final deployment before considering civilian opportunities, Sarah reflected on her journey. The young woman who had walked into that recruitment office years ago had been driven by a desire to serve and challenge herself. She had exceeded every expectation and broken barriers along the way. Her reputation within the special operations community was solid. Commanders trusted her judgment, teammates relied on her skills, and subordinates looked up to her leadership. She had proven that excellence knew no gender boundaries and that determination could overcome any obstacle. The upcoming deployment would be different. Sarah had been selected for a special assignment that would require her to work undercover in various civilian settings. Her training and experience made her perfect for roles that required blending in while maintaining operational readiness. It was exactly the kind of challenge she thrived on. As she packed her gear for the mission ahead, Sarah thought about her grandmother, who had passed away the previous year. Maria had lived long enough to see Sarah receive her commendation for service, and the pride in her grandmother's eyes that day remained one of Sarah's most treasured memories. She carried her grandmother's strength with her everywhere she went. The foundation had been laid through years of rigorous training, dangerous missions, and personal growth. Sarah Martinez was no longer just a woman trying to prove herself in a male-dominated field. She was a proven warrior, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The skills, experience, and confidence she had built would soon be tested in ways she never expected, beginning with what seemed like an ordinary day in a military mess hall. The mess hall at Naval Base Coronado was bustling with the usual evening crowd when Sarah entered. She had just finished a grueling training session with new recruits and was looking forward to a quiet dinner. Her civilian clothes, jeans, a plain t-shirt, and sneakers helped her blend in among the various personnel who filled the large dining facility. To most observers, she appeared to be just another woman on base, perhaps a contractor or civilian employee. Sarah grabbed a tray and moved through the serving line, selecting a simple meal of grilled chicken, vegetables, and rice. The familiar sounds of conversations, clinking silverware, and kitchen noise created a comfortable background atmosphere. She found an empty table near the back corner, preferring to sit where she could observe the room while eating in relative privacy. As she settled into her seat, Sarah noticed 3 young men in Navy uniforms approaching. They appeared to be fresh out of basic training, their crisp uniforms and eager expressions marking them as new recruits. Their name tags identified them as Petty Officer Johnson, Seaman Collins, and Seaman Rodriguez. They looked to be in their early 20s, full of confidence and bravado that often came with completing initial military training. The 3 recruits had been engaged in animated conversation about their upcoming assignments and their hopes of eventually qualifying for special operations training. Johnson, the apparent leader of the group, had been boasting about his physical fitness scores and his certainty that he would excel in any advanced training program the Navy offered. "Look at that," Johnson said quietly to his companions, nodding toward Sarah's table. "Civilian contractor, probably. Bet she has no idea what real military training looks like." His tone carried the arrogance of someone who had yet to experience truly challenging circumstances. Collins chuckled and added, "Yeah, probably some desk job. Wonder what she's even doing on base." The third member, Rodriguez, seemed slightly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation but said nothing to discourage his friends. The 3 young men had been drinking coffee and were feeling emboldened by their recent completion of basic training. They had spent weeks hearing stories about the elite units stationed at Coronado and had developed strong opinions about who belonged in military special operations. Their limited experience had given them confidence but little wisdom. Without considering the potential consequences, Johnson stood up and approached Sarah's table. His companions followed, creating an intimidating presence around her. Sarah looked up from her meal, immediately assessing the situation with the trained instincts of someone accustomed to potential threats. "Excuse me, miss," Johnson said with mock politeness. "I was wondering what brings a civilian like yourself to eat in our military facility." His tone suggested he believed she didn't belong there. Collins and Rodriguez flanked him, crossing their arms and adopting aggressive postures. Sarah calmly set down her fork and looked up at the 3 men. Her expression remained neutral, showing neither fear nor aggression. "Is there something I can help you with?" she asked in a steady voice that betrayed no emotion. Johnson interpreted her calm response as weakness. "We just think there might be some confusion about where you're supposed to be eating. This facility is primarily for military personnel." He stepped closer to her table, invading her personal space in an attempt to intimidate her. The confrontation was beginning to attract attention from other diners. Several tables of personnel had stopped their conversations to observe what was happening. Some looked concerned about the developing situation, while others seemed curious about how it would unfold. Sarah remained seated, continuing to project calm confidence. She had faced far more dangerous situations than 3 overconfident recruits. Her training had taught her to de-escalate when possible while remaining prepared for any necessary action. "I understand your concern," she replied evenly, "but I assure you, I have every right to be here." Collins decided to escalate the situation. "Look, lady, we're not trying to be rude, but this is a serious military installation. Security is important here." His voice carried a threatening undertone that suggested he was prepared to take action if she didn't comply with their demands. The 3 young men had no idea they were confronting someone who had undergone years of combat training and had served multiple deployments in hostile environments. Sarah's unassuming appearance and civilian clothing had led them to completely misread the situation. Their overconfidence was about to meet reality in a way they never expected. Rodriguez finally spoke up, though his tone was slightly less aggressive than his companions. "Maybe you should just find somewhere else to eat. There are plenty of places off base that would be more appropriate." He seemed to sense that something wasn't quite right about the situation but couldn't identify what was making him uncomfortable. Sarah's eyes briefly scanned the 3 men, automatically noting their posture, positioning, and potential threat level. Her training kicked in as she evaluated possible responses to their escalating behavior. She could see their muscles tensing and their body language becoming more aggressive. The mess hall had grown quieter as more people became aware of the confrontation. Several senior enlisted personnel were beginning to take notice. Though they hadn't yet intervened, the situation was reaching a tipping point where something significant was about to happen. "Gentlemen," Sarah said calmly, still not rising from her seat. "I think there may be some misunderstanding here." Her voice carried a subtle authority that none of the three recruits recognized. Years of leading dangerous missions had given her a commanding presence that could cut through chaos and confusion. Johnson decided to press his perceived advantage. "No misunderstanding here. We're telling you that you don't belong in this facility." He leaned forward, placing his hands on her table in a clearly threatening gesture. His face was now only inches from hers, and his intention to intimidate was unmistakable. The other two recruits moved closer, forming a tighter circle around Sarah's table. They believed they were in control of the situation and that their show of force would compel her to back down and leave. Their collective behavior demonstrated the kind of poor judgment that comes from inexperience and overconfidence. What the three young men failed to notice was the subtle change in Sarah's posture. While she remained seated and appeared relaxed, her body had shifted into a state of readiness. Her feet were positioned for quick movement. Her hands were free and prepared for action, and her breathing had become controlled and focused. The tension in the room continued to build as other diners watched the confrontation unfold. Several people were reaching for their phones, preparing to call security or document what appeared to be heading toward a physical altercation. The three recruits were oblivious to the growing audience and the potential consequences of their actions. Sarah made one final attempt at peaceful resolution. "I really don't want any trouble here," she said quietly. "Perhaps we should all just go back to our meals and forget this happened." Her tone was reasonable and non-threatening, giving the three men a chance to withdraw gracefully from the situation they had created. But Johnson interpreted her continued calm as further evidence that she was weak and intimidated. "Too late for that now," he said aggressively. "You should have left when we asked, nicely." He straightened up and looked at his companions, confident that they had successfully established their dominance. Collins and Rodriguez nodded in agreement, feeling emboldened by their apparent success in intimidating what they perceived to be a helpless civilian woman. They had no idea that they were about to discover just how wrong their assumptions had been. The moment of truth was approaching rapidly. Sarah could see that peaceful resolution was no longer possible. The three recruits had committed to their course of action and were preparing to escalate further. Her years of training had taught her to recognize when situations passed the point of no return. In the space of a few heartbeats, everything was about to change. The three confident young men who thought they were intimidating a random civilian were seconds away from discovering they had chosen the wrong person to confront. Their overconfidence and poor judgment were about to collide with reality in a way that would be both immediate and memorable. Sarah's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward her identification, which would reveal her true status and credentials. The three recruits continued to loom over her, completely unaware that their misconceptions were about to be shattered in spectacular fashion. The transformation happened in an instant that seemed to stretch into slow motion. Sarah rose from her chair with fluid precision, her movement so controlled and purposeful that it immediately commanded attention. What had appeared to be a simple woman standing up revealed itself as something entirely different. The controlled power of someone trained for combat situations. Johnson found himself looking directly into Sarah's eyes, and for the first time, he noticed something that made his confidence waver. There was an intensity there that he had completely missed while she was seated. Her gaze was steady, calculating, and utterly fearless. The casual demeanor she had maintained throughout their confrontation was replaced by the focused presence of a trained warrior. "Before this goes any further," Sarah said in a voice that carried unmistakable authority, "let me introduce myself properly." She reached into her back pocket and withdrew her military identification card, holding it where all three men could see it clearly. The identification revealed her name, rank, and most importantly, her assignment to Naval Special Warfare Command. The words, SEAL Team 5, were clearly visible, along with her security clearance level and combat deployment ribbons. The three recruits stared at the card in stunned silence as the reality of their situation began to dawn on them. Rodriguez was the first to fully comprehend what they were seeing. His face went pale as he recognized the significance of her credentials. "Oh no," he whispered, taking an involuntary step backward. His mind raced as he realized they had been confronting one of the most elite warriors in the entire military. Collins looked confused for a moment before the implications hit him like a physical blow. His aggressive posture crumpled as he understood that they had been threatening someone who could have ended their military careers with a single phone call, not to mention someone who possessed combat skills they couldn't even imagine. Johnson's reaction was the most dramatic. The blood drained from his face as he processed what he was seeing. His hands, which had been confidently placed on her table moments before, began to shake slightly. The realization that he had been attempting to intimidate a Navy SEAL was almost too overwhelming to process. The mess hall had grown completely quiet except for the background noise from the kitchen. Every person within sight was watching the unfolding drama, many of them recognizing the significance of what was happening. Several senior NCOs in the crowd were shaking their heads in disbelief at the recruit's monumental error in judgment. Sarah calmly returned her identification to her pocket and remained standing. Her presence now filled the space around their table in a way that made it clear she was completely in control of the situation. The three men who had been so confident minutes before now appeared small and uncertain. "Now then," Sarah continued in the same authoritative tone, "would you like to reconsider your assessment of whether I belong in this facility?" Her question was rhetorical, but it drove home the point that they had been operating under completely false assumptions about who she was and what she was capable of. Johnson struggled to find his voice. When he finally spoke, it came out as a croak. "Ma'am, we had no idea." He couldn't finish the sentence, his throat tight with the realization of how badly he had misjudged the situation. His earlier bravado had evaporated completely, replaced by the dawning understanding that he had made a career-threatening mistake. "That's exactly right," Sarah replied. "You had no idea." She let that statement hang in the air for a moment, allowing its full impact to register. "You made assumptions based on appearances and acted on those assumptions without gathering any actual information." Collins found himself unable to meet her gaze. "We're sorry, ma'am. We didn't know." His voice trailed off as he realized how inadequate his apology sounded. The arrogance he had displayed earlier now seemed embarrassing and childish in retrospect. Sarah's expression softened slightly, but her authority remained unmistakable. "The question is, what are you going to learn from this experience?" She looked at each of the three men in turn. "Are you going to remember that appearances can be deceiving? Or are you going to continue making judgments based on incomplete information?" The lesson was clear to everyone watching. In their eagerness to assert their military status and demonstrate their toughness, the three recruits had revealed their inexperience and poor judgment. They had learned a hard lesson about assumptions, respect, and the importance of understanding your environment before taking action. Rodriguez managed to find his voice first among the three. "Ma'am, this won't happen again. We understand now." His tone was sincere, and it was clear that the experience had genuinely impacted him. The cockiness he had displayed earlier was completely gone, replaced by genuine respect and understanding. "See that it doesn't," Sarah replied. "The military is a place where respect is earned through service and sacrifice, not through intimidating people you perceive as weaker than yourselves." Her words carried the weight of someone who had earned her position through years of dedication and proven performance. By now, several senior personnel had approached the area, including a chief petty officer who had been observing from across the room. His expression made it clear that the three recruits would be having additional conversations about their behavior before the evening was over. "Is everything all right here?" the chief asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. His eyes moved between Sarah and the three junior personnel, assessing the situation with the experience of someone who had dealt with countless similar incidents over his career. Sarah nodded respectfully to the chief. "Just a misunderstanding that I believe has been cleared up." Her tone was professional, neither minimizing what had happened, nor escalating it unnecessarily. She understood the military hierarchy and how to handle situations like this appropriately. The chief looked at the three recruits with an expression that promised future discussions about conduct and judgment. "I see. Well, I'm sure these sailors have learned something valuable today." His words carried clear implications about the consequences they would face for their poor decision-making. Johnson, Collins, and Rodriguez stood in awkward silence, knowing that their evening was far from over. They would need to explain their actions to their superiors and demonstrate that they understood the lessons from this encounter. The incident would likely follow them for the remainder of their time in training. As the immediate tension began to dissipate, Sarah returned to her seat and her meal. The three recruits remained standing uncertainly, not sure whether they should leave immediately or stay to make further apologies. The dynamics of the situation had completely reversed from what they had initiated. "Gentlemen," Sarah said without looking up from her food, "I suggest you finish your meals and reflect on what happened here tonight. The military will present you with many situations where quick judgments are necessary, but this wasn't one of them." Her advice was offered without malice, coming from someone genuinely interested in their development as military professionals. The three men moved away from her table, their earlier unity replaced by individual embarrassment and uncertainty. They returned to their own table, but found it difficult to resume their previous conversation. The confidence they had felt before approaching Sarah had been replaced by a more sobering awareness of their limitations. Other diners gradually returned to their own meals and conversations, though many continued to glance towards Sarah's table with newfound respect. Word of the incident would spread quickly through the base, adding to her reputation while serving as a cautionary tale about the importance of respect and proper conduct. Sarah finished her meal in peace, reflecting on the encounter. She had handled the situation exactly as her training and experience had taught her, remaining calm, de-escalating when possible, and asserting authority only when necessary. The incident had been resolved without violence while providing valuable lessons for everyone involved. As she prepared to leave the mess hall, several other personnel nodded respectfully in her direction. Her professional handling of the situation had reinforced her reputation among those who witnessed it. She had demonstrated the qualities that made her an effective leader in high-stakes situations. The three recruits watched as she disposed of her tray and headed toward the exit. Their misconceptions about her had been thoroughly shattered, replaced by a healthy respect for both her abilities and her character. They would remember this encounter for the rest of their military careers. Before leaving, Sarah paused near their table one final time. "Good luck with your training, sailors. The military needs good people who are willing to learn from their mistakes." Her words were encouraging rather than condescending, offering them a chance to move forward positively from the experience. Johnson looked up at her with genuine appreciation. "Thank you, ma'am. We won't forget this." His response was sincere, marking a significant change from his earlier attitude. The lesson had been learned in a way that would stick with him permanently. As Sarah left the mess hall, the three recruits sat in contemplative silence. They had entered the evening as overconfident young men who thought they understood military hierarchy and protocol. They were leaving with a much deeper appreciation for the complexity of military service and the importance of treating everyone with respect. The 20 seconds that transformed their evening had taught them more about military bearing, professionalism, and humility than weeks of classroom instruction. They had encountered a true warrior who had chosen to educate rather than humiliate them, demonstrating the kind of leadership they should aspire to achieve. The incident became part of base lore, serving as a reminder that excellence in military service comes in many forms, and that assumptions about others' capabilities are often dangerously wrong. Sarah Martinez had once again proven that quiet confidence, backed by genuine skill, was far more powerful than loud bravado based on inexperience. For the three recruits, the encounter marked the beginning of a more mature understanding of what military service truly meant. They had learned that respect must be earned, and that true strength often comes in forms that aren't immediately apparent. The lesson would serve them well throughout their careers, assuming they remembered and applied what they had learned in those crucial 20 seconds.